Y'all hear me? Hear it? Good, good, good.
Can you hear us? Yep.
All right. So welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Cummins' story of optimizing for value. So I'll let Hemraj start off, introduce himself.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Hemraj Yadav and I lead Cloud and FinOps in Cummins. And we are 107-year-old organization. We are global technology leader in power generation. We design, manufacture, and distribute engines and power generation solutions. We operate in 190 countries. And on personal note, I have 26 years of experience in driving digital transformations, multi-cloud strategy, and optimizations, data center modernization. So today we are going to talk about FinOps at Cummins and the partnership with IBM, with Kevin and team, and how we driven the business value through resources efficiency and optimization.
So quick intro. So Kevin Smith, I am the, sorry, I know I'm going to do that, my mistake. I am the global field CTO for Turbonomic and FinOps at IBM. Also used to be a previous customer of Turbo. I was one of Turbo's largest customers before I came to work for him. Like Hemraj, I've been in this a long time. In fact, in July, I'm going to celebrate 30 years in IT. So it's been a journey for sure. But I've done everything from racking and stacking to doing data center engineering, design, everything in between. So looking forward to the conversation though. All right, so let's get into the agenda, right? Really, there's 5 key things we're going to talk about today, right? The FinOps execution gap, that going from what do we do with all this data to how do we drive change, right? And then Cummins and their journey and where was their inflection point? And then getting from that insight into that continuous mode of optimization. And then, of course, how do you operationalize value-driven FinOps, right? And then we'll wrap it up with some outcomes and some takeaways.
So before we jump into this, I want to ask one question, like how many of you have the centralized FinOps? And how many of you have tried to have the FinOps platform in-house developed and then moved to the third party? So you started with third parties? Okay, great. So one of the things that made this work for us at Cummins was kind of implementing the FinOps practices upfront, having the defined roles for each and every team and their accountability. So the FinOps is not sitting with one person, one team, one function, but it is a shared discipline across the organization. And when every team is aware about what they are responsible for, then the FinOps execution is not a burden to one team. And therefore, we have these different personas we implemented through the FinOps practice. And starting with the leadership, they set the goal for the cost and performance, and they also hold organization accountable to them. So one thing what we have done in this space is we followed the top-down approach, which makes it easy for us to implement the decisions what we do have. The other persona we have is the FinOps team. This is a centralized team. We do have 3-4 members in the FinOps team, and I'm leading this team. So they are owning the discipline, FinOps discipline, and they are responsible to define the KPIs, to define the FinOps platform implementation, also how to measure the success, how to measure the progress, as well as they are kind of kept the engineering and other personas together to the common shared goals. The other persona is engineering. Basically, they are very critical part of what we are going to talk today. because we are going to talk about the execution at scale. So engineering is basically a critical element when it comes to the execution. And in our process, they stopped holding the execution as a task in backlog, but they started implementing the platform recommendations upfront, real time through self-service. Other persona is the finance. They brought the governance, and they are kind of keeping track of cloud spend against the business outcomes. And they also kind of validating what we are providing them as a savings, whether it is a real saving, it is a sustainable savings or not. Then we have the procurement team. They are indirect purchasing team, which they helped us to drive the rate optimization. Whatever the contract or commitment we have, they kind of bringing the best discount on those commitments and contracts. We have product team. They are responsible to deliver the product capabilities. And when the product team, they started talking about the infrastructure cost when they are delivering the product, that is where the conversation changes up front instead of having them as afterthought. Then the last team is the platform, and I'm also part of the platform team. The platform team is key element on the foundation level. They are responsible to deploy the foundations, and that is helping us to drive the optimization at scale. So they are responsible for all kind of integrations to these FinOps platforms, the tools, as well as kind of working with FinOps team to drive that efficiency.
So, quick show of hands, right? How many of y'all, your FinOps team has identified more savings than you've realized? About half the room. Yep. And that's common, right? We see that every day, right? That's what this looks like, right? We've solved the industry has solved the problem of visibility, right? We've got tons of dashboards. We've got a million different ways how to break it down into a million different views of, the most detailed unit economics about your cloud and FinOps processes and all of your cloud spend and everything. But how do you get past that point, right? And that's what this looks like, right? So you have dashboards is great, reporting is great, but how do you drive change? How do you make those numbers look different? How do you get from that point of just visibility to execution to then operationalizing everything, right? Making it continuous, right? And so Hemraj is going to get into a little more about what that looks like, the gap between knowing what you have and how much you're spending or how much you may even be wasting to doing something about it.
I think you may have the same problem, like exactly what Kevin talked about. The biggest frustration we faced was kind of knowing what kind of waste we have, and then kind of not addressing them on time. So keeping the data with us and not acting on them, that is where the major concerns we had. And because of that, we kind of continue to slip on our saving target. In early days, we remember that when we talk about the FinOps practice implementation, we also implemented the anomaly detection processes and all that, but that was also providing us the data points. It was not acting on what we identified as unused resource or not being used resource. So again, the actions were manual, they were coordination driven, and the approach was not sustainable. And specifically when we talk about the cloud where the cost is accumulate by minutes or hours. That's why we agreed to be here today,
right,
and we talk about what
right,
it took to close this gap.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, if you see this, this is a really hybrid state, and I think most of the organizations, they do have the same kind of footprint. So this is fairly typical but complex state spread across cloud and on-premises. having the legacy and modernized workload. Over the time, they organically grown with different tools, platforms, multiple teams operating together. At this scale, it is very difficult to have the optimization on the cost and performance together, as well as it's not about optimizing one environment, but you are trying to keep the balance between multiple specs, whether it is application, platform, or services. And that is where we are now operating at continuous optimization at scale. To be honest, it was not started that way early days. As I mentioned earlier, it was all manual actions where the FinOps team, they were identifying the opportunities, and engineering team, they were executing them manually, which was not their primary or priority task.
Right.
So while you see the state is fairly strong, but the issue was not operating it efficiently at scale.
Yeah, and this is what Turbonomic had to work with, right? We're not talking about sitting in some pristine lab in a controlled environment. This is a real major enterprise, major constraints, major problems, and we went in and we worked with them and helped them to solve the issue.
So I talk about that we implemented the FinOps practices and the platform. So for us, the problem was not the visibility. We had enough data points to act on. The real issue was acting them on fairly good time, on fast enough. We had growing backlog on the engineering recommendations, but engineering team, they were rightly engaged in delivering the product capabilities. So the optimization keep on deprioritized. As a result, saving targets, they continue to slip. It's not because of that the opportunities were not there, because of we couldn't execute them on time. So the cost of this gap was real. The wastages on the cloud spend over the time, delaying the realized savings, and having the team as frustrated because it was one of the ad hoc requests to them to optimize the resources and not part of their process. So finally means it is not about the visibility, it is all about execution at scale.
Right, and this is, you can go back one slide real quick. This is the FinOps execution gap, right? It's everybody has tons of data. Half of this room raised their hand talking about how much data that they had about how much money how much money I'm spending, but not about but the fact is you're not reclaiming more than what you're talking about, right? You're not able to make any changes, drive those changes. That's the industry gap, right? And it's not just a Cummins problem, it's industry-wide. This whole room, people outside this room, all have this same problem. And so, thinking about this, just building a little more into that, right? There's three stages. So visibility, we talked about that. Industry solved it. Dashboards, visibility, unit economics, great. Then you have recommendations. So recommendations, this is where we're starting to get some of that data and we're starting to garner insights from it. We're starting to generate recommendations about how we can make changes. But what comes with that? Trust. Your application teams, your business units, they have to trust that that recommendation isn't going to break that application, right? And then you have stage 3, right? So getting into stage 3, that's continuous execution. But how do you get there? It's a maturity curve, right? Visibility isn't maturity. Visibility is just better reporting, right? It's more detail. You've got to get to that next stage where you can take those recommendations, you can start to build those trusts, create the guardrails that allow your application teams to have confidence in the recommendations. And then from there, get into that continuous execution mode where you take FinOps, your FinOps organization, your FinOps practice, from not just a reporting agency and not just executing on savings via small projects, but it becomes a continuous, repeatable optimization cycle.
Yeah, as Kevin rightly mentioned, most of the team, they stall on recommendations. So when we saw this framed this way, we kind of realized that we were not trying to get better on the reporting, but we were trying to get better on the acting. So at the start, Cummins was fairly on the visibility stage when we implemented the FinOps practices. But today we evolved to have the continuous execution through our operational framework, and this is embedded into the platform operations. So it is not one of the ad hoc tasks now, it is continuous repeated process being executed by different personas. And how we managed to reach to that level was, there were two approaches we followed. One is the proactive way of doing the optimization, and you may be doing the same thing as well, where the designing of the solution is cost efficient itself. And we are hybrid multi-cloud organization. So our design, we keep in mind that we leverage the best-in-class hyperscaler for our product designing and all that. And then implementing the design using the cloudability governance and enforce the governance through the policies. And then on the reactive ways of doing the optimization, we have IBM Turbonomic as a platform. We work with Kevin and his team to integrate that with the ITSM process itself. So we are not keeping that platform as a standalone, but we have integrated that to the ServiceNow or ITSM process. The platform generating the recommendations, it's creating the change ticket to the owners and the team, and they are going there and they are putting the downtime window for their recommendations, and the platform is taking the actions. So we are no more waiting for anyone to provide us the downtime. We have given them the self-service, and they are responsible for that. And our FinOps platform and ITSM platform, they are providing the visibility to them and their leadership if they are not able to meet the targeted savings or optimization. Continued from the last slide, it is no more kind of a standalone project, one-time ad hoc task for us, and we are really implementing or implemented it as a continuous approach. So the goals are embedded to each and every team. Some of the CIO-led initiative also help us to drive this continuous efficiency through different teams. And as I mentioned, we are taking this as a portfolio, not a standalone platform or approach. We have multiple platforms who are helping us to optimize as well as doing the usage or rate optimization for us.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is the reason that this shift held, right, is because the decisions were always current. They were always trustworthy. It was based on real-time data. It wasn't based on stale exports of something I have from 7 days ago, a screenshot of some performance. It's based on what's happening in the moment with that application demand, right? And this gives the application teams the confidence to not second-guess the recommendations, because they clearly see this is looking at and judging on and making the recommendation based on exactly what's happening on my app in this given moment, at this given time, based on my actual demand, my actual application demand against my various assets in my cloud or in my DC, right? So we'll talk about how, you know, that really worked in practice and how Cummins was able to remove that friction out of the environment in order to create that trust that embedded that ownership. Did it change? Here we go.
So when we talk about the ownership, I talk about different personas and accountability. At organization level, the biggest shift was the ownership and accountability, definitely. Earlier FinOps identify the opportunity, and engineering team, they used to go back and put those recommendations into their backlog, and whenever they do have the time, they kind of acting on them. But today it is operated as a shared cost and performance goal, driven through our leadership engagement and initiatives. And as I mentioned, these optimization platform, they are integrated with ITSM, so which is reducing the manual efforts as well as improving the execution speed through the policy-driven governance and guardrails, which is embedded into the process for the platform team as operations, right? So it is no more a standalone task or ad hoc task for anyone. It is part of their daily routine and executing those optimizations. So,
yeah, you know, let's see what that looks like.
This is also a very important slide when we talk about the FinOps. Basically, it is all about the trust between different teams and how you build that trust. So this is how our trust journey evolved. As you know that building trust is not immediate. So engineering team, they were initially kind of skeptical on implementing automation and specifically on the production environment. We kind of helped that through some kind of structured implementation or execution approach, and the confidence was grew gradually through the controlled execution and clear guardrails and policy-driven governance, and having the full visibility into the actions by each and every team. So with the controlled approach, we were able to provide some realized saving very quickly to them, and they are also part of our reward program. So we introduced some programs for the teams to kind of keep them motivated on what they are doing in the space. And also we connect with other teams who are not doing well, so that what kind of support we can provide to them from the FinOps to bring them to the fold as well.
Yep. And so, you know, getting into that confidence, right? So the rewards programs and all of that stuff, it's great, right? And it's a motivator, but at the end of the day, the application teams still have to believe in the recommendation, right? Otherwise, they're not going to do it, right? And so this is what this looks like. You know, you have a clear explanation of exactly what's going on with the environment, and then what would it look like after the action, right? We show you the before and after, so they have a story behind it. It's not just a recommendation that says, hey, your CPU is running at 20%, you know, we can reduce you down by 30%. It's performance-based, it's not cost-based. It's looking at what is the actual demands on from your applications against that infrastructure, and how can I properly size that in a safe and trustworthy way that's going to make sure my applications always have the resources they need, but I can do it at the lowest possible cost. A quick thing, all waste in cloud, all overspend in cloud is actually a performance issue. And then think about it. From way back in the days of virtualization, we've always over-provisioned because it was easier, right? With VMware, you had a bunch of hardware on your floor, you could just give some extra CPU and memory, no big deal, bump it up an extra 20%, they've got guaranteed resources. Move to cloud, take those same sins of the past into the future, now you pay by the minute, by the second, by the hour for those over-provisioned resources, right? And you're still not using them, but you got to have that confidence to be able to make that change now and address that performance issue. So before, we didn't know what we didn't know. Now, you can, with confidence, look at that and say, I can clearly scale this down. I'm still going to meet all my performance needs. And at the same time, while I'm addressing this performance issue, I can also operationalize this, I can automate these actions, and I can start to remove that excess cost out of my environment.
And on top of what Kevin mentioned about this, it's like there are some actions which are non-disruptive.
Right.
So through the policies, you can implement those actions in the platform itself. No manual intervention is needed by anyone. And there are some actions which are disruptive. So for that, as I talk about, we kind of integrate those actions to the ITSM process. So because we are the platform team, we are the FinOps team, we are not near to the business. whoever is near to the business, they can decide when they can have the downtime for the recommendations what we provided to them.
So again, getting back into the 3 modes, right? So you have stage 1, which is your decision intelligence, right? It's the analysis of that real world demand, generating that specific recommendation, kind of what I showed you on the previous screen, right? And then you get into phase 2, or stage 2, sorry. Stage 2, I'm gonna keep doing that. Policy guided automation, click the thing. And so this is where now, okay, I've got recommendations. I've started talking to my business units. I'm talking to my application teams. Hey, what about this recommendation? And well, you start to get into the exceptions, right? That's where you start to implement your guardrails. We can only scale within these certain boundaries, things like that. So now you're telling Turbo, you're telling your execution engine, okay, these recommendations are great, but I need to tweak and tune a little more so that I can refine it. And again, building that trust in the recommendations. And then once you've got there, now you can start to get into stage 3, right? And stage 3 is now where you've got the decision intelligence, you've refined the recommendations through policy guidance, you've now got guardrails in place, you've got active governance. You got active governance also mixed with automation. So now you have a decision engine that understands your business's governance in order to generate recommendations that are going to conform to what your application teams need in order to trust to be able to take these decisions so that you can start to reclaim some of that excess cost, right? Stage 3, you're now in scaled continuous automation. You're not removing the policies. You're getting better. You just got better over time at defining those guardrails, at honing all of that in. You've identified the exceptions through your environment by setting initial guardrails. You have some business units that say, yes, I can do it. Others that say, well, I need another tweak. Eventually, you get to the point to where you're now scaling continuously. And this is what Cummins did. Cummins didn't remove the guardrails. They just got better at defining them.
So as Kevin mentioned, we realized our success from one of the ad hoc cost optimization project to the continuous execution through the operating model. So it is operating model now for us. We started with controlled approach, having the small set of low risk, high confidence actions, because it is all about trusting the platform, trusting what we are doing through the automation. So the objective was to prove the model first to all the personas, and then the early executions what we have with kind of efficiency we delivered and the savings we delivered kind of brought the confidence to the team through that controlled executions. And as we matured in that practice, we further implemented the guardrails through the policy-driven governance. And as I mentioned earlier, we have multiple platforms as a portfolio which are helping us to drive these policies, governance, and guardrails across the portfolios. So in the last slide, we talk about the progress through the stages. And this slide highlights the overall impact which we have achieved through the FinOps practices and platform with the governance and platform-driven optimization, both cloud and on-premises. So with this single operational processes, over last year, we were able to execute almost like 800K optimization actions across our cloud and on-premises. So they are different kind of actions, and we are not the container organization as of now. We are still getting matured on the containers. So these actions are mostly about the right sizing on the virtual machines, on the databases, on the parking of resources in non-production environment. So we do have the policies across the time zone. We are a global organization. So we are keeping our non-production workload down during the night, during the off business hours, during the weekend. And these actions are kind of part of that implementation, which kind of provided us the 52% effective saving rate, what we are spending on our cloud and on premises. Also, this is not, as I mentioned, one time of the project, it is now continuous, and we are operating on this model for last 5 to 6 years. And it is sustainable now because we can see our improvements the day we started on these platforms and practices and how much matured we are on, which is also like we are fifth high performer customer from IBM platform standpoint.
Yep, absolutely. You know, and this is the difference between optimization as a project and optimization, you know, as an operating model, right? It's the difference between identifying some things, putting together a project, going and doing one-time optimizations, to moving to that continuous, real-time, always driving the waste out of the environment, always keeping the environment as performant as possible. And the outcomes will always hold because the process never stops. So, you know, everybody sit and kind of look at this slide for a second and think about this, right? You know, I think this question's worth, you know, thinking about a little deeper. Is think about your environment and, you know, where are you on the path from knowing to doing, right? You know, are you still at the dashboard level, or do you have recommendations, but you're really stuck in that stage 2 of trying to figure out how do I start to be able to implement recommendations? Or maybe you're implementing, but you're still not able, you know, it's really just the low-hanging fruit, the very easy stuff to take, deleting orphan files, or maybe scaling some non-disruptive storage actions, things like that, but you're not really hitting those big wins, you know, those big scaling actions. You know, whatever it is, you know, it's we're here, we'll talk to you about it, we'll sit down and we'll help you get through that journey. You know, Cummins closed that execution gap and they've kept it closed. You saw from the numbers, one of Turbo's most successful customers. And, you know, they're an amazing story. So, you know, Hemraj, thank you for coming. And you know, I want to open this up for a QA now. Q&A, if anybody has any questions, anything like that, feel free to ask.
Yeah, one thing I just want to add before we go for the question answers, it's like the closing comment. Start with the visibility, you know, and then go for the trust building with different personas by following structured adoptions or execution, and try to do it at scale, because without the scaling, there are so many actions, so many recommendations, they keep on changing based on the dynamic workload.
Absolutely.
Right, so it is not something you can do manually, and we have learned it. Means initially we started kind of 10 years back, we started to create our own platforms for optimizations, but we couldn't keep it because we did not have the strength to, or effort or resources to keep it up with the changes what we are seeing today in IT industry. So start with the visibility, do the structured adoptions or approach or execution at scale, and building the trust with the team, which is very important because FinOps is all about personas. And I would say implementing the FinOps practices and the platform helped us to reach to that level. And some of the leadership initiatives, the top-down approach is very critical in this space because you are connecting with multiple BUs, functions, and all of them, they don't have the same priorities for optimization. So, which is also very critical for us to think about. It's a great story, and thanks for IBM for being our strategic partner.
Absolutely.
And thanks for FinOps Foundation for providing us the framework, which we are operating it as repeated optimization at scale. Thank you everyone for coming.
All right. Quick training for the audience for Q&A. Holding the box does not make you loud. Talking into the box makes you loud. Okay, here we'll start with Jonathan.
Can you talk a little bit more about the implementation of going from before to after, as far as how long did it take, size of the team? Did you have assistance from IBM to go through there? Because I mean, this all sounds great, but I'm just trying to get an idea of like the scale of this thing.
Good question. When it comes to the implementation time, it took 10 to 11 months to implement the practice and the platform. And when it comes to the team size, I talked about the FinOps team is 3-person team. And the way we design the FinOps is it's not kind of their own responsibility. It's like security, it's everyone's responsibility, right? And when it comes to the implementation approach, we had this as a project. We worked with IBM as our partner. We designed the project, and we designed as a structured, phased approach, what we want to achieve first. We wanted to have the KPIs and all that created first, so that we do have the framework to measure our progress and success, and then we implemented the optimization platform.
Hi. So how do you go from recommendation then sustainable savings, like you said, right? Do you develop policy guardrail, and which recommendation matures to policy guardrails? So how do you define, like, okay, we need to have a policy to make this savings sustainable?
It's a good question, and I touch upon on that. There are two kind of actions, disruptive and non-disruptive. So the policies are majorly driving the non-disruptive actions, like we are hybrid multi-cloud environment. Given an example, like on AWS, you go for the storage GP2 to GP3. So that is non-disruptive. So you can change the GP2 to GP3 through the policies if they are not captured upfront through our implementation provisioning process, or there are some old implementation we have, right? And then the second is I talked about, which is very critical and important as well, giving the platform as a self-service, not the platform directly to the end user or personas, but giving them through the ITSM process. So we integrated Turbonomics with ServiceNow. So Turbonomics is generating the recommendations. Those recommendations are going to the ServiceNow, and the ServiceNow change ticket is created to the respective owners and application team. And they do have kind of flexibility to go there and provide the downtime window when they want to have that execution, right? Because every team work in a different way. So after they submit the downtime window, then it goes back to the platform, and platform takes that actions during the time. So now, because it is integrated with the ServiceNow, the change management process is visible to the leadership. So it's not like individual, they can kind of play around with the process. It is visible to all levels, and there are questions being asked if something is not executed, which is having the high impact to the saving.
Thank you. I was just curious, of the 800,000 actions that was taken, how much of this was automated versus ITSM integration based?
I would say it's like 40-60%, 40% actions are for the right sizing, and all the right sizing actions are through the ServiceNow. We do have two processes. One is individual requests or recommendation going to the ServiceNow, and they are kind of taking them every day. Then we do have some processes, we call it bulk execution. So we do it 2 times in a year, and that is what my team responsibility is. If something is missed and we do have pile up of those actions, then my team goes there into ITSM process from the back end, and we do have the downtime window from the business, and we executed those actions. So given an example, like recently, we had the bulk execution and we executed 13,000 actions in a day through that. So the process is kind of helping us. It is not someone is manually monitoring it or taking the actions. It's operating model.
Yeah. So yeah, and just to add that, right? Even though it's running through the ITSM, his ITSM processes, right? It's our integration with ServiceNow is a fully automated integration, right? A quick flow of what it looks like is Turbo generates a recommendation. Turbo has a plug-in with ServiceNow that allows it to immediately take that recommendation and drop it into a flow that will automatically generate that service request. It's generated against the CI, so now we have ownership information. We've populated it with all of the data. What's wrong with the server? What do we need to change? It goes through Cummins approval flows. Once it's approved, the asset owner, they put in there, okay, you can do this on the third Saturday of the month, 2 o'clock in the morning, you have a 2-hour maintenance window. ServiceNow sends that data back to Turbo. Turbo automatically generates that policy that says, all right, on the third Saturday of the month at 2 o'clock in the morning during a 2-hour window, I can implement these one or many changes that have been approved. Then we go and do that. And then when we're done, we send that data of the change back to ServiceNow, update that change ticket, and close it. So it's still an automated process, but now it's an automated process where your application teams also have an approval and a stake in it.
And one thing to add on this is, like I touched upon on the parking, it's a self-service again to the team. We as a platform team provide the schedule windows for different time zones, and anyone can come and they can attach to different schedules. But we do have the flexibility for them to do the override. If they do have any development activity going on in the weekend or non-business hours, they do have the process to override for a specific time. And we do have the automation on top of it, so that they don't go around and remove the schedule from the resources. So we do have the policies. If there are resources which are not attached to any schedule, the policy attached to the default schedule to them.
So this is a very impressive journey. May I know how long it took for you to reach to this maturity?
So 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so we started early, and I talked about that we tried to do through in-house development platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we had some success over there, but with all these changes, we couldn't keep it. Right. So we partnered with IBM, and we reached to this stage in 5 years. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.